Hiring managers of Reddit, what was your most WTF is wrong with this person moment you've had during an interview? I once had a candidate for an intermediate level analyst brag during an interview that he used to work other jobs and play poker while working his primary office job, for example, for about 2 weeks before he was caught and got fired from both jobs. He would take long lunches. No one knew where he went between 10:30 and 1:30. Turns out he had gotten a job making pizzas at the next door pizza restaurant and worked the lunch rush. He also bragged about playing poker at work constantly. This was in the late 2000s, while online poker was still in its boom. He bragged these things to me as if I, a relatively young professional at the time, would think he was cool. Or maybe he thought it demonstrated his ability to multitask and still get his job done. I have no idea. Either way, we did not extend him an offer. Had a candidate who came in and said how hot my admin was and asked if she was single or open to Freaky Fridays. Me, I see you managed a vegetarian restaurant. Interviewee, what? It says here you managed a vegetarian restaurant. Oh, I guess I did write that. Not really though. My girlfriend had an art exhibition and I organized the sandwiches for the opening. They were vegetarian. This was a candidate that was otherwise pretty impressive seeming and had been among the favorites for a quite sought after position. The interview had even gone quite well up until this point. Met him later at a party. He had no memory of me. This kid, probably 18 to 20, started picking his nose, like knuckle deep, and digging for gold in the middle of his food service job interview. Wrapped that up real quick and didn't hire him. I interviewed a gal once, and while we were talking, I was looking over her resume. Please note that English is her first language or else this wouldn't have humored me so much. Her mission statement on her resume was as follows. Along with my detail-oriented and organizational skills, I will bring encourage team to work cooperatively and creativity to provide an understanding the visual aspects of our work. Apostrophe. This was for an admin position at a law firm. Not sure what the visual aspects of our work entailed in this position. Honestly, I read it over about 5 or 6 times. Worried that I was having a stroke, so I didn't really hear much of anything she said during the interview. I haven't been able to make sense of it, no matter how many times I read it. I actually cut it out of her resume and have it sitting on my desk some 15 years later. TL. Doctor, she was a lazy liar. Hiring a business intelligence analyst. There are a variety of ways to get into this profession. I'm open to many of them. Frankly, if you have a good head on your shoulders and know even basic SQL, I can probably work with you, though lately I've had to get more picky as our projects have become more complex. This woman is mid-40s, boisterous personality, and seems like she'd be a good organizational fit. The problem is she keeps lying, but only halfway. Do you know SQL? Apostrophe. Oh yes, I have years of experience with it. Apostrophe. Great. So take a look at this code. This is the sort of thing we do. Apostrophe. What's this? Apostrophe. For some reason, though, the most egregious lie that stands out in my head with her was when she commented, when I suggested she not take a particular route to the train station because it was dark and potentially unsafe. Also, I was headed to the same station and did not wish to commute with her, that she had a black belt and had practiced martial arts for years. Oh, cool. What discipline? I don't remember. FFS. Hiring for a senior dev position. Had a telephone interview and she seemed confident and competent, so I flew her down for an on-site interview. She calls not me, but the front desk reception, and says she can't drive in a big city and needs a car to pick her up, and she refuses to get the rental car we reserved. Before Uber/Lyft, call is transferred to me, and I tell her to take the train. Atlanta. Marta. No, she says. Too scary. I tell her to go to the taxi stand and take that. Nope, afraid of taxes. She wants a corp limo to pick her up and nothing else will do. She is adamant. I put her on hold. Have a chat with my boss, who says just send her home. She's too much work if she can't even handle this. I tell her thank you for taking the time to fly down, but not even our own VPs get that treatment, and to go ahead and change your ticket to fly home. Now, She then starts telling me she will take a taxi, etc. I said please don't bother, it will be a waste of everyone's time. Thank you. Goodbye. Not once when setting up her travel plans did she say she needed assistance getting from the airport. It was explained to her she would pick up a rental car at the airport. She was fine with it. No idea WTF she was thinking, but ain't nobody got time for that nonsense. We had a shortlisted candidate come for a campus interview. This usually includes meeting with the dean, a long interview with the full hiring committee, a formal meeting with the department chair, dinner with the hiring committee, a formal job talk, 1-hour academic lecture, teaching a sample undergrad course, and meeting some students, as well as a campus tour. During the job talk, he kept flashing the pink satin liner of his suit jacket in the direction of one of our openly gay grad students. Everyone noticed. Later, he proceeded to get trashed during the meet/greet with the students at a local bar and confided all of the dirt about his current department and overshared the status of his rocky relationship with a grad student back at his home university. A big no-no. Even though it happens sometimes. The next morning sealed the big fat no. A grad student usually volunteers and is compensated to drive the candidate back to the airport. This person kept trying to persuade the openly gay grad student to drive him instead, even though another student, female, already had the task assigned to her. He didn't get an offer. When she listed all of her ex-boyfriends that currently work there and said she couldn't wait to see the look on their faces when she showed up to work. This was in the first 3 minutes of the interview, so I wasn't even close to offering the job yet. I cut the interview right there and sent her on her way. This was about 3 weeks ago. We had a woman who works at the generic retail big box store across town wanting to transfer to our store of the same name because it's closer to her house. She showed up for the interview wearing a faded shirt from a local redneck bar, complete with rebel flag, cut-off jeans, and flip-flops. During the interview she proceeded to talk shit about 6 different managers/associates by name from her current store. She cussed during the interview and kept telling us more and more about the people she didn't like. Do people not realize that if we hear them talking shit about them, that we know she'll do it to us too, and at least dress for an interview? I set up an interview for an acquaintance's nephew with a company looking to hire 30 college students for summer work. The nephew's major and the line of work this company performed seemed to mesh perfectly, and I knew the hiring manager personally, so it seemed like a great fit. A couple weeks later the acquaintance emails asking about the job, so I hit up my hiring manager friend and the conversation went something like this. Me, hey, how'd the round of hiring go? Bowers, great. Needed to fill 30 spaces and only had to do 31 interviews to fill them. Me, oh cool. So was Paul X one of them? Bowers, oh him. Yeah well, UHH. He was naked during the interview so we declined. Me, what? Exclamation mark. Question mark? Exclamation mark. Are you serious? I find it hard to believe he would show up to an interview nude. Bowers, well it was a Skype interview. And when we brought up his video feed he was laying in bed nude. Me, oh. Well maybe he thought you couldn't see him. Maybe he thought it was just an audio meeting. Bowers, we told him we could see him, and he said sorry then covered up with a sheet. We asked if he wanted to reschedule, and he said no he was good. So yeah we decided to pass. Sorry Paul. I've had 2 separate cases where people were so confident that they had the job that they botched the interview. On one of these, I wanted to tell the candidate to go out and come back in again because he was one of 2 very good choices and his arrogance put my team off. They thought the other candidate would be a better fit. I was performing a video interview with a candidate. They were clearly in a large room/bedroom, with most of it visible in the background. But it was clean, so I didn't mind. In the back right corner was a closed door. About 7 minutes into the interview I see the door open slightly and some dude poke his head in. See that his roommate/girlfriend was in an interview then close the door. Not a big deal. It happens. I ask my next question and let the candidate respond. But then, about 30 seconds later I see the door slowly open again. Only this time the dude comes crawling out the bottom. He continues to crawl across the floor making his way to the opposite side of the room. I assume he thought he was out of the camera's FOV, but he was clearly visible. He gets to the far end of the room and turns to fiddle with something ass in the air facing the camera. Finally, he finishes up with whatever he was doing and makes his way back and out the door. I know I should have stopped the candidate and had her deal with the dude, but it was so funny to watch I had to let it play out. I could barely contain my laughter, and after the interview finished I lost it. She got the job though, and from what I remember, was a great employee. Hiring for a customer support role. Explained to candidate on pre-interview email how she would need to sign in at our reception kiosk and register herself. Get name tag sorted. Then the hiring manager, me, would be informed and would come out to the lobby to get her. 15 minutes before interview time, I hear a god almighty jangly noise and see a woman repeatedly trying to open the locked door, and at one point, uses her hands to beat the door and wave at people inside. I open the office door, ask her how we can help. Find out she's the candidate we're meant to interview, and she never read instructions. She lost out on the role there and then, but we still met with her for about 10 minutes. We interviewed 3 other people that day and none had problems with interview etiquette. The strangest ever was a man telling us all about his mom's Alzheimer's, talking crap about our company, and getting upset we didn't offer him the position on the spot. It was a wild ride beginning to end. I had someone show up in Daisy Dukes and cowboy boots for an office job at a 4-star hotel. We were looking for a sous chef that would be able to work and train for a few months and then eventually fill my shoes as CDC, as I was leaving in about 6 months time. We were a big, very successful restaurant in a super competitive city and had a ton of applications and interviews. Most interviews for a chef position include a pretty informal chat with a hiring chef, the owner and the general manager, and a cooking/tasting portion, where the interviewee plans a menu of 5 or 6 dishes and serves them to the interviewers. One guy came in and killed the interview and served incredible dish after incredible dish, but the owner didn't like him because the guy interviewing was tattoo-less and 50+ years old, and he felt that this guy's age wasn't conducive to our hip, late night vibe. Whatever. You do you, Jeff. You insufferable prick. The owner calls me a few days later and tells me that he found a guy that he wanted to poach from a small bistro just outside of town. This guy comes in and is super cool, fresh jacket, oozing confidence and a ton of cooking tattoos. The owner is in love, and I'm hoping that this guy is into overweight guys with chef jackets that are 2 sizes too small. Before the interview, all candidates had to send over an ingredient list so that we could order any ingredients that they may need for the cooking portion of the interview. And this guy had requested some foie gras for a dish he said had been awarded time and again, a foie and lobster crepe. Didn't sound very good to me, but I was willing to give it a shot and see how it went. After the meeting, the guy went into our kitchen and started cooking. After about 10 minutes we all hear the guy screaming at one of our prep cooks to slice him some chives. A few minutes after that he brings out the app, which he says is his take on shrimp and grits, something that is already on our menu, and that he says is better than ours. I point out a few things. The shrimp is overcooked, the grits are gluey, and that the chives he was so stressed out about weren't even on the plate. He tells me that the problem was that our prep cook didn't speak English and that when he was chef, he would make sure the entire boss staff was fluent. Holy shit, warning bell #1. After 2 more dismal dishes, he tells us that he is going to make his famous crepes. I'm ducking pumped because I know that it is going to be an absolute shit show. The dude is in the kitchen for at least 45 minutes, screaming, cursing and throwing shit around. I go back into the kitchen to see what the guy is doing, and he is fiddling with the Vitamix, which looks like it's full of cork. I ask him what's going on, and he tells me that he's just blending the crepe batter. I point out that crepe batter usually doesn't have the consistency of modeling clay, and he pretty much tells me to duck off, and that this dish has won awards. I look over at his phone, which is out on the table, and see that there is a recipe from alrecipes.com for crepes pulled up on it. So, not only does this guy not know how to make his signature dish, but he can't even follow a simple ducking recipe. He brings his dish out, and it's a ducking mess. SS. Burn foice. It's rubbery lobster. Broken béarnaise, etc. The concept sucked, but the execution was somehow even worse. The crepe itself though, was a culinary abortion. It was as if someone had given a lump of grey Play-Doh a pap smear. I straight up told him that it was one of the worst things I'd seen produced in a kitchen. And he pushed back saying that it would have been great if my staff had given him the support he needed. Despite my protests, we hired him. The owner thought that he was cool and projected the kind of image we needed. He lasted about a month before I threw his ass out of my kitchen, which the owner never forgave me for. I called the old guy that killed the interview and offered him the job, and he essentially told me to get bent because he knew he deserved the job in the first place. And he was right. To start the interview, I asked him to tell us, 3 people, a little bit about himself. 35 minutes later, he stopped talking. Usually people answer this question in 1 to 5 minutes. It was incredibly awkward, and I was tempted to interrupt him, but then truly wanted to see how long he would go. We have a very simple pre-employment test. If you have been in our industry for more than a year, you should get 100%. Sometimes we even give it as an at-home test. We had one guy that took his test home, had it for over a week. He brought it to the formal interview and got 90% of the questions wrong. Even though according to his resume he was an all-star and knew everything. He had an excuse for every wrong answer to even the most widely known questions in our industry. It would be the equivalent of saying you have been laying sod for 20 years and then put the green side down. He didn't get the job. I did a phone interview with a guy and he seemed really excited and very friendly. He seemed to be relatively new to the field, but we were willing to give him a chance. I invited him to come in for an in-person interview. My manager and I were doing this second interview, and when I called him in, he gave me a huge hug and proceeded to talk to me like I was his best friend. As a 27-year-old woman, I was incredibly uncomfortable and froze up. At the end of the interview, we told him we would reach out to him within the next couple of weeks to let him know the outcome. After the interview, my manager asked if I knew him, and I said I definitely did not. His interview was not great either, and he was not a good fit for the job. My manager was the one who had to call him to let him know he didn't get the job. However, he proceeded to call my phone every day that week and left me long voicemails. Most of the times he'd ask about his interview, but sometimes he'd say things like, "Hey girl, how are things going?" I was thinking, if I get hired we should hang out. It freaked me out, and I had my manager call him early to give him the news that he did not get the job. The calls did not stop, and I just kept deleting his voicemails without listening. My manager and I were so disturbed by his persistence that we went to ours for help, and they must have done something because the calls stopped after that. Please subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.